hacer un enlace con Chase Purdy. Él es reportero de negocios de Quartz, donde se encarga de cubrir la industria alimentaria, la de tecnología de alimentos y la biotecnología. Antes de llegar a Quartz trabajó para Político, donde cubrió el tema de las políticas relacionadas con el sector de los alimentos. Su trabajo ha aparecido en The New York Times, así como en periódicos de todo Estados Unidos, y actualmente está escribiendo un libro sobre alimentos futuros. Chase, welcome to Foro Global, to the Quartz section every 15 days. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I was very intrigued by your piece titled, "If the entire US went vegan, it would be a public health disaster." And I was very, very intrigued because I'm a vegetarian myself. And I've been reading a lot of books about it. You know, the very classic book called Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran and The Animal Liberation by Peter Singer and many others who defend the idea that the world would be better and if we were all vegetarians. So please tell me why it would be a nightmare if the entire US went not only vegetarian but vegan.
Well, so I think one thing that needs to be made clear from the beginning is that this was a study that examined what it might look like if the entire United States got rid of all animal agriculture tomorrow in one snap. And they basically found that it boils down to the fact that there are a lot of nutrients that our bodies need that come from animals, and that there are enough people who would be deficient in those nutrients, they wouldn't have them, that it would cause like a public health problem.
It will cause a public health problem. Many people talk about the deficiencies in nutritional factors if people went vegan, and many people who are vegetarians, they need to have protein from soy or other kind of things. But you also talk about the effect that it would have on greenhouse gases emissions. And apparently, it's not a very significant factor. It's not a very significant decrease if people stopped eating meat.
Well, now that is a so. Really, I think what this study sort of points out is that there's a lot of work to be done to figure out how we best measure what animal agriculture's impact on greenhouse gas emissions are, because there are not a whole lot of studies that look into this, but the ones that are out there, the numbers are very different depending on which study you look at. And that's because scientists have a difficult time figuring out how exactly they want to measure that decrease. So this study shows that there wouldn't be a very big decrease if we got rid of animal agriculture. However, there are other studies out there that say the opposite. But most people maintain that animal agriculture contributes to at least around 9, 10, even upwards to 20% of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. alone. And there are people who have looked at it on a global level, and they would say that, you know, it's more like 24%. And there's one study that even says 51%. But it's all about how you measure it. There's no one single way to measure it, and that's kind of a problem.
And on the other hand, you also talked about the new meat industry that is becoming more green, that is becoming greener, that is kind of the future. Why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
So, yeah, this is basically cell-cultured meat. And the industry that's making it likes to call it clean meat. And what it is basically scientists have figured out how to take a handful of cells from an animal, from like a cow or a pig or a chicken, and they let those cells sit in a nutrient-dense liquid. And when those cells are in that liquid, they start to reproduce. And when that's in a bioreactor, it creates real meat that doesn't actually need to come from a live animal, so there's no need to slaughter an animal. And that process uses like 99% less land, emits like 85% fewer greenhouse gas emissions, uses way less water, and it's technically the same thing. On a molecular level, it is the same thing as meat. It's still a very new technology, but they're making the companies behind it are making huge strides, and it could very well be like the meat of the future. And if it does become that, you can imagine that it would have a potentially huge effect on like our environmental footprint.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. Is there any company that now is producing this kind of meat, no meat?
So there are actually 8 companies in the world that are racing to get lab-made meat to market. 3 of them are in the United States, 3 of them are in Israel, 1 is in Japan, and 1 is in the Netherlands. And 2 of them that are probably closer than any of the others are both here in the United States in California. One of them is Hampton Creek, and the other is Memphis Meats. And those 2 are really close, I think, to figuring out how not only to make this meat, but how to figure out a way to make enough of it that it could be affordable for people to buy, that it could even be competitive with the cost of conventional meat that you can find in grocery stores right now.
Wow. Well, Chase, thank you so much for these minutes of Foro Global. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a clean turkey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gracias a ti por habernos acompañado esta noche en Foro Global. Soy Genaro Lozano. Te invito para que continúes con la programación de Foro TV. Te espero mañana en punto de las 11 de la noche para una nueva emisión de Foro Global. Y por lo pronto te deseo muy buenas noches.